Hey guys, before the episode starts, I just want you to know that there's some audio issues with echoing and stuff in this video. There's not much I can do about it now, but I think the video turned out pretty well other than that, so if you can suffer through that, then enjoy.
All right, welcome back to the EDHTakes podcast, the number one place for what are we the best at, Spencer?
Complaining, I think?
Yeah.
Did you just set that up so you would put me on the spot so I'd have to come up with the topic? Was that what you were doing?
Well, anyways, I'm Elijah Samuelson.
I'm Spencer Cook.
And today we wanted to do a little miscellaneous deal, just kind of flesh out our characters a little bit more and have a more relaxed conversation on just a few things that are sort of pet peeves, sort of just kind of hot takes, but not really. We're not trying to have anything really controversial or...
We're not coming up with ideas specifically to be against the mold or whatever. It's just
we're not looking to change minds. Some of these things might actually be very common that we're going to say. It's just little miscellaneous things we wanted to talk about, and we didn't think would make a full episode's worth of content.
But hey, maybe you do change your mind about some of these after hearing them, Never know.
I mean, maybe. We're usually right, so...
Almost every time, yeah.
Pretty much, like, all the time.
All right. Well, you wanna bring us into the first one, Eli? Oh, I guess I'll start. You know what? Me. Okay. So...
This is like our heater. This is like the S tier miscellaneous takes of the EDH takes.
Yeah.
Like,
these aren't little baby ones.
I think this is our best one, I think.
Okay, yeah. So my first hot take here is that Scry is not as good as people seem to think it is. And to kind of elucidate what I mean here, there was a Playing with Power podcast episode that they did about Lorehold, and they were talking about Scry, and Alex from the Spike Feeders made a comment that he had made a Twitter poll at some point that was pretty much saying...
Yeah, he did a Twitter poll that was, what would you rather do in a game of Commander? Either draw 2 cards or scry 3 and draw 1.
I really hope I'm right about this, but I really would like to see more of, if you're swinging with all your stuff, or swinging with a subset of stuff, scry X. I asked a question on Twitter a couple of weeks back. The question was basically, would you rather draw 2 or scry 3 and draw 1? Right? I think that's a very difficult question to ask. And I think that question gets rougher and rougher and rougher the higher the scry gets. At a certain point, you're essentially stacking your deck with a card like Albu.
And he said that was essentially a hard question to answer, and it would get even harder the more, scry increased. And I'm going to say it right now, that is not a hard question to answer. Anybody with a brain will say they'd rather draw 2 cards over scry 3 and draw 1 in 99.9% of situations.
I mean, I agree with... I'd go for the draw 2, but I could see how people might be confused about that, especially as the scry gets bigger, because that was another part of the question. I think he did a second poll, or an unrelated poll, that was like, what scry X equals a card, and it going up to like 10 or something like that.
Yeah. And, I'm going to say it, guys. I think, scry X, what does the X have to be to equal drawing a card? I'm going to say scry infinite doesn't even get to equal draw a card.
Scry reorder your deck.
Yeah, reorder your deck is not draw a card. And you can't say, oh, people like to say, oh, well, scry 3 is about a card, is worth of value, and it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. And, my main argument for that is like, when you really need to draw a card or scry, like when you're in danger, like let's say you're going to lose pretty soon, or you need to like deal with a threat right now, scrying without drawing a card doesn't do anything about that. And even if you pair scry with draw a card, I would almost always take like the draw 2 instead of the scry 3 draw 1.
That's a good point, because we were trying to break down our arguments before recording this, and what you're saying there about immediately answering a threat. So if it's just scry or draw a card, some people would say in the favor of scry, like, well, I want to be able to make sure that I'm drawing gas, but something is better than nothing, and the scry is immediately it's nothing. Like, without additional draw attached to it, scry...
It is nothing, yeah.
It's
until like, the next turn.
If I had the choice in that instance of like really needing my way out of something, and I could choose scry 10 or immediately draw the card, the draw card might be what I need. It doesn't matter what's on top of my deck.
The scry will never be what you need.
Right.
If you need to do something now. Yeah. And I think, what was it? One thing that we were talking about, Eli, earlier, was this when we were talking about the idea of like doing things now versus playing for next turn versus playing for this turn, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really common theme in card analysis, and a thing that Commander players do a lot because the games are longer. People like to constantly be playing for next turn or like the turn after, and it's a thing that you feel like it's very smart because you compare it to something like chess, and you're like, oh well, I'm next leveling, and
I'm thinking
like
2 turns ahead or
steps
something.
ahead. I'm thinking for the future, but really like Magic's not like you can kind of do that, but in the instance of at least Scry, it's not really like that. It's not that valuable.
Yeah, no, I don't think. So, like, an example of this might be you might be planning to play a board wipe in a couple turns or something, so you kind of slow roll your creatures, right? Or something. But then it could turn out to be the case where you really weren't going to play your board. Like, the game turns out into a way where your board wipe isn't good anymore, and all you did was hurt yourself by not playing your stuff out.
Right. Commander has too much hidden information for you to. Like, you can do some planning ahead.
You can kind of
but
hedge.
Really, your 3 opponents, their many decision points can alter what your plan is on a turn-by-turn basis.
Yeah, so, I mean, just to kind of wrap it up, like, obviously, Scry is obviously a positive thing. Like, if you're able to Scry 1, it's better than not Scrying 1, of course. But I think I've just been hearing players kind of try to equate Scry to card draw, and also kind of try to evaluate it as more than it is. They say like that Scry has like hidden value or something to it, and I just honestly think no, it doesn't have hidden value. It has very little value, and that little value is very overt. Like it's not hiding anywhere.
Well, the value it has is on cards that are attached to additional card draw.
Yeah, it has to be.
It comes with that.
And I guess sometimes you need to Scry effect. Like I play a Charming Prince, and you Scry on turn 2 sometimes to hit a land drop. Like it's not bad. It's just let's move on from Scry. I think we've talked about it enough.
Before we move on, I just wanted to say the main thing that they kept drumming onto on the Boros episode was how good Alibu is.
Yeah.
And I like Alibu, and I think it's a good card. But one thing Alex said was he wanted to see more Scry when you attack or something in a mono white or Boros, and it's like. We play white, we play Boros. I don't really care to see that.
No,
much.
I would much rather have... I'd much rather play like a card that draws 1 versus Scrying 8 almost every time. And maybe that's a super hot take, but that's just me, personally. Mm-hmm. I would take a card over Scry 8 almost all the time.
Yeah. So, speaking of pseudo, not really card advantage, my first thing I want to talk about are cantrip cards. Mm-hmm. You might know them like Preordain, Serum Visions.
Yeah, all those cards, Ponder. Everything, Taxion Probe, whatever.
Yeah, the big ones. I think they just really, really do nothing. And Brainstorm is the other one. People think Brainstorm is... I've seen Brainstorm played in so many Commander decks, and I just think, like...
Yeah, I think that one's a pretty medium take, because I think a lot of people, as of recently, have been being like, oh, Brainstorm's not as good as you think it is, kind of thing.
Yeah, and
they're right. I think they're right.
Yeah, so this one's not a super hot take. Just, I really think, man, they do straight nothing. Like, it's just kind of a spinning your wheels sort of thing. Like, you might say, oh, it sets up my next draw or lets me keep sketchier hands.
Sure.
I don't know.
You really, I think I agree with you, Eli. You really do have to have a reason to play cantrips, and a good one at that. So, and most of the time, a reason from the command zone, I would say.
Yeah, so the big examples we came up with were like Talrand or Kess Dissident Mage. Kess, I'm pretty hot on that one. That seems good, like turning a cantrip into 2 mana draw 2. That seems actually good. Talrand, this is going to be maybe because I'm sure there's people who have like Talrand decks and good Talrand decks, but I feel like playing a cantrip to get a 2/2, that's on the very like, and we respect bodies in combat, but that's on the very like, that's like the floor of the value you should be
Would
getting.
you say you'd rather just play like a spell that does something and then to get the 2/2?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a reason that you would want to play cantrips would be something like Veyron or something like that, or maybe like a Niv Mizzet where like it gives you another card, or Veyron being a lot of damage off of stuff like Gutter Snipe. I could see that.
Yeah, exactly, and this kind of ties into something we probably talked about before on the podcast on the idea of cards that really only have any kind of utility when your commander's in play. Mm-hmm. And I'm not high on those kind of strategies and that kind of deck building.
I'm not either, Eli. I really don't like to only function when my commander's in play. I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, at least cantrips, like, they cycle themselves in that situation, so they're not totally bad. They're better than some kind of cards like that, like Combat Tricks in a Feather deck, but
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, yeah, like cantrips in a feather deck makes sense, I suppose, if they took like an expedite or something, right? Like because you get to get it back. But as a general rule, I wouldn't make like a control deck or something and just throw like a brainstorm and like a ponder in there. Like they don't do anything.
Yeah, like I feel
Almost never I'd play them.
I remember a game, and brainstorm especially before Hull Breacher got banned was that kind of card where you could kind of get got by brainstorm. I remember somebody was playing their Scarab God deck.
Yeah.
And that's a deck I really don't think... I mean, maybe they probably did have reasons. I think the guy who was playing it I regarded him as a pretty good player, and he had a good deck, but he went to play a Brainstorm, and I flashed in an Alms Collector, and he had to single target bounce my Alms Collector back to my hand with his Cyclonic Rift to avoid, like, drawing one and then having to put two back in his Brainstorm.
And the Brainstorm wasn't really doing much for him, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think it really... The best case scenario with Brainstorm is you're up no cards.
I mean, I get the mentality, like, he wants to put some bad cards on top and then scry off of the Scarab God, right? But
yeah, that could be the
reason,
but...
right? But, like, you have to start to get pretty cute to, like, make cantrips good, right? So...
Yeah, they take... There is some assembly required.
Yeah. And on the kind of theme of talking about, like, scrying and cantrips, and a lot of these cards allow you to kind of mess with the top of your library, I want to talk about tutors, and more specifically, Topdeck tutors. So, for example, cards like Sylvan... Sylvan Tutor, yeah, Jesus Christ. Sylvan Tutor and like Mystical's Tutor and
Idyllic Tutor,
all the the
Vampiric
Tutor, all of the tutors that put a card on top of your deck. I think that they're just not as good as people think they are. Obviously, the best case, usually there's always the crazy starts where you go like Vampiric Tutor into like a Mana Crypt or something, right? That's obviously good. I'm not going to say that's bad, but for the most part, I think the tutors that cost 1 mana more, or maybe even 2 mana more, and they put the card in your hand is just going to be better for you, I think.
Yeah, I think they're undeniably good, but I think they're rated so highly to the level where if there was a somewhat new Commander player and they were learning more about the format, say they had like, God, I don't know the cost of these tutors right now. I know Vampiric is a lot more
very
money,
expensive,
but if somebody, say, had around $50 to spend on a Magic card, and they wanted to get like a single like really good card to tune up their deck, they might be like, oh, I want to go get an Enlightened Tutor.
It's like, no, get a Demonic Tutor instead.
Yeah, depending on their
or sure, get like, if you're playing like an equipment deck or something, Enlightened Tutor I think is going to be worse than a what's the 1 mana tutor? Steel Shaper's Gift. Thank you.
Yeah,
because when you get Enlightened Tutor and you put like a sword on top and then they kill your sword, you are not just down a card. You're not just down the tempo. You're also down a full card. Whereas with a Steel Shaper's Gift or something, it's more specific about what it can do, but you're not down a card. It's a big deal.
These cards, I think, are really... their power really scales with the power of your deck. Like, if you're playing a highly tuned or a near like CEDH deck, then absolutely they're good, and I'll back those up, because being able to go turn 1 Enlightened Tutor into turn 2 Mana Crypt, play a 4-drop plus or maybe more stuff.
Or like going Mystical Tutor into like a source of card advantage, like that way you can kind of get your cards back, right? Like, it's not like they're super bad, but like one thing that I want to bring up that I think is super important is, I know it's green and white, but Eladamri's Call I think is just like about 4 or 5 times better than Sylvan Tutor by a lot. By a lot. It's such a great card. Big fan of that one.
Yeah, you don't see too many instant speed tutors that put the card directly into your hand.
It's literally just, especially at least for 2 mana, it's just Eldamri's Call, and I guess if you want to count it, the one with Undergrowth, right?
Oh yeah, where you got to have so many black cards in your graveyard.
You get a black creature. You have to have creatures. It cares about number of creatures in your graveyard.
Yeah, and I don't even think I'd count that one, because it's not a.
It's not. It's very specific about what it can do.
You can't really play it on turn 2 for anything.
Yeah, but
most of the time,
for sure. So you want to? We're talking about tutors and top deck tutors being kind of bad and stuff for you. Like, do you want to maybe get into that?
For how often these cards get brought up, by the way, you really don't see them super often. I'm just gonna say, like, in my experience, like, you'll see them occasionally, like, people play with them, but people, when they're talking about Commander stuff, they like to bring these cards up constantly, like they're Like, you see them in every game.
Like, they're ubiquitous to the format or something.
And so many of them are just so expensive that you really don't, like, unless people are proxying, like, Enlightened Tutor, I think, is around $50 right now.
Vampire Tutor, I think, is like around 100 or something. I don't know exactly, but it's a lot.
It's close.
Yeah.
But what I was going to bring up is the idea where people always evaluate parts of cards with the idea that maybe, like, oh, I'm gonna mess with somebody's top deck tutor, or just like people play top deck manipulation cards in general, and I just don't think it's that valuable. I don't think it's really worth bringing up that often.
Yeah, so you're saying like stuff like Sensei's Divining Top outside of the scenarios where it's obviously good, like when you combo off with it, really don't do that much. Or maybe even cards that mess with other people's top decks, like maybe, for example, being able to mill someone one if they do like a top deck tutor. You're saying that's just like that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I understand some of the like combo applications of Sensei's Divining Top, but I've been playing Commander for a long time, and Top has been a big part of the format since I started playing. It was never the kind of card that I ever thought I would want to get for any deck, because I'd seen people play with it, and it really, most of the time, it's just you spinning your wheels. It's just paying 1 mana, look at the top 3 cards of your deck,
And then cry.
and yeah, if they suck, it sucks to be you. I mean,
You can fetch land and stuff, but whatever.
I've seen people play fetch lands in their monocolor deck to like untop lock themselves.
Yeah.
But it's
It's a little bit.
a bit of a hoop to jump through.
Yeah, and I personally, I bought a top when I was a kind of new player because I was building an artifact deck. And in a deck where, you draw cards off of casting your artifacts, I get it. Top is a 1 mana cantrip and then does stuff later, right? Like less bad, right? But since then, I don't think I've played top in more than one other deck since in the last 5 years. It was just 3 decks. That original deck, my the girl that makes fairy tokens and you play an artifact, and that was a combo with both Citadel and stuff. And then I played it in a cast Dissident Mage deck as well.
Yeah. So my main point is just, Commander content Commander content creators were perpetually evaluating new cards, and something that is just universally brought up in every set is this idea of like, oh, this card interacts with your top deck, or it's top deck manipulation, or you can mess with somebody's top deck tutor or something like that. And I just think
it's kind of cringe.
It doesn't matter. Like, it's just one thing I wanted to bring up as an example of top deck manipulation, the command zone, when they were talking about Plarg, Dean of Chaos, our boy.
Yeah. Big boy.
Who, if you don't know, you pay 5 mana, you tap Plarg, you go until you get a non-legendary spell that costs 3 or less mana.
And you cast it for
that card.
Yeah, from your deck.
Yeah, and that card, that's just good enough as it is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You're drawing a free spell,
And
effectively.
casting it.
And Jimmy and DJ, I think, were just going on about all the stuff you can do with like top deck manipulation.
Like
and,
scroll rack, right?
Scroll rack, and it's like, is it just not good enough? Or like, I think I've seen them or heard them talk about the same thing regarding spells with Cascade, and it's like, it's good enough.
Yeah, no, I think you're really... The only reason I could ever see you wanting to do that is if you're, like, playing a suspend card, like a restore balance or something like that. And then, like, that's the only reason I want to put a card on top to cascade into or, with Plarg into. Other than that, you just take whatever you get.
Yeah, in which case, you're doing that with Scroll Rack, which, by the way, is, if we're going to compare Scroll Rack and Sensei Top, I think Scroll Rack is by far the better card.
Mm-hmm.
But still,
I can get you with that.
It's another one that I think it is far overrated.
Yeah. And then also, I think Jimmy as well, he was talking about the card You Find Some Prisoners, which is from the new D&D set, Adventures of the Forgotten Realms, and one of the modes is you target an opponent and you like exile the top couple cards of their library, and then you get to cast them until the next turn.
Yeah, it's exile the top 3 cards of an opponent's library, and you can play one of them until the end of your next turn.
With instant speed or whatever, yeah.
And he's like, oh, you can do this in response to somebody's top deck tutor. It's like...
no, Jimmy.
No, you won't.
Sure you can, but like that's not that's a little bit too wishful thinking, I think. Yeah.
If you've seen this happen or seen it happen commonly, please tell us in the comments, because I've never seen it happen.
I get that it happens every once in a while, but no, I don't think it's very common.
I know it can happen. I don't think it's worth bringing up as an evaluation for like whether or not a card is good or bad.
Yeah, people do bring it up more often than I would think is necessary. Yeah. So yeah, I guess moving on from there, I do want to talk about a concept that I kind of think is another thing that's not talked about enough. Well, I guess we were talking about something to talk about too much, now something not enough. You'll see cards, they'll print cards like Emil, the unicorn horse commander, and you'll see people say stuff like, oh man, Emil's really cool, I love that. I kind of wish it was a mono-white deck so I could play a mono-white blink commander, because I've been looking for one of those for a while. And then I'm just sitting here being like, bro, you can play. You don't have to play green cards in an Emil deck, right? Because it's hybrid mana for the activation. You could that is your mono white commander. Play it as a mono white deck. Great.
Take back the power.
Yeah.
I mean, I can relate to this a little bit because my main Boros deck, which is now Gerard, used to be an Aurelia deck. Before that, it was Jorkadine. And there was a point when I was considering maybe making it an Alesha deck and just not playing any black spells in it, because you can totally use her. She costs red, her activated or her triggered ability is either white or black mana.
Yeah.
It could totally work. It could be a Boros deck, and I just thought in my head, well, it's technically not a Boros deck, so it feels like somehow cheaper, or like not as special, like I'm not doing cool Boros things as much because I'm using technically a Mardu card.
Technically maybe you lose some clout from it or something, but
you really shouldn't think like that.
Just,
if you want to do it, just do it.
For example, right now for the last several months, I've been playing a Kaza Royal Chaser deck, and it doesn't play any red cards in it. It's just a mono blue deck with just enough sources of red so I can cast my commander. And you really don't need that much. I think I have 8 red sources in the deck, and it's enough.
And it was just the 8 of them.
Yeah, and some of them tap. It's like 4 or 5 mountains, and then a couple mana rocks, and command tower.
Pathway, command tower.
Yeah,
Path of Ancestry,
stuff like that. Exotic Orchard, whatever. And I had a lot of fun. I mean, it's like a fun stipulation to play that as a mono blue deck or whatever. And maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, oh, I want to play this. I want to play a Gruul deck, but I can't find a Gruul commander that I even like that much for my strategy. I want to play Gruul monsters. Screw it. Play Kresh the Bloodbraided and just put a couple ways to make black mana and then play only Gruul cards. It's fine.
I mean, you're going to play Command Tower in your 2-color decks anyway.
Yeah, you're going to play Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, those sort of stuff. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
And then you just play, you get to, adding the color, it makes your deck even better because now you can play more Signets and more Talismans. Before you were only stuck to playing the couple. Now you can play, the red-black and the green-black Signet. Sick. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a very, very novel idea. I like it. I think it makes me want to consider it because, like you're saying about Emil, that'd be a really cool mono-white commander. I mean, I'd love to have a mono-white dedicated blink commander.
Sure, or even
like that.
Or even just play Shuyun as an Azorius deck or something. Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you ever feel there's a commander that you're like, man, I hate playing. I hate Sultai, but I like playing green and black. Just play a Sultai commander without blue cards in it or something. It's fine.
Or if you're like, I want to play a Dimir commander that can actually block stuff, play Tasigur.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
big beefy guy.
Sick. Yeah. Yeah. Usually you need to pay 8 mana or 7 mana to get a 5/5.
I guess you get I'm just thinking.
I mean, you got Scarab God and stuff.
Legendary creatures. Yeah, I guess.
Isn't there one that's a 5/8 or something for 7 mana?
I'm probably totally wrong. I just said that off
the cuff. Yeah, no worries. I gotcha. Well, he's a big beefy boy for a cheap
huge.
Mana. Yeah, it's
he's 1 mana.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess talking about how easy it is, I think, to play. I think adding a third color to a deck and then playing. Just 2 colors in the deck. It's not that hard to add the black or whatever.
Well, people might be hesitant to do this because they might think, well, color fixing is already such a drag. I don't want to strain myself any farther than I have to. I don't want to have to jump around extra hoops to be able to cast my commander. Well, I'm here to say color fixing in Commander, I don't think it's as hard as everyone's making it out to be.
It's really easy, I promise.
It's not something you need to dedicate specific cards to within your deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking as somebody sitting on my EDHTakes millions, with all my fetch lands and stuff. I don't play a lot of fetch lands. Spencer can attest to that if I get called on this.
Yeah,
I don't own a lot.
Yeah. A couple in the very powerful decks. Other than that, not really at all.
Yeah, and I could not play them, and I would be totally fine. I think my one deck that I play the most fetch lands in is my Varina Lich Queen deck because I just want to have cards to exile to Varina, and that's a reason. I don't need to do that. That's not making my deck like really stronger. It's just a reason why.
A small reason that helps. Yeah,
because I had fetch lands anyways. So I was like, I'll put them in there.
Yeah.
But things like, Chromatic Lantern at least taps for a mana, so I can like give that the pass as being like a decent 3-mana rock, and maybe you really want to play super fast and loose with your mana base and your amount of utility lands, because some people really like to play utility lands.
Some people like 10 plus. It's a lot.
Yeah, people will be like, oh, don't play any tap lands in your deck, and then meanwhile play 20 colorless sources in there.
It's like, oh,
3-color deck, and you're like,
why can't I cast my commander?
Yeah. Oh, I got really unlucky this game. I got stuck on my colors. It's like,
I'm playing my Glissa deck. It costs black, or green, black, or black. What is it? Is it green, black, or black, green?
I think green, black.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I played my land lets me sacrifice a creature and gain a life. Oh no, I can't play my commander now. Shoot.
Yeah, so, I mean, Chromatic Lantern, give it the pass, but any spell that, like, specifically is based around, like, fixing your mana, you can achieve that with lands, and you can also achieve it with, like, actual mana-positive mana rocks, mana dorks.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to get around that.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, I can't remember the last time I really ever got stuck. I mean, I don't play really more than 3-color decks, but even my 3-color decks, their mana bases aren't like $1,000, and I'd still.
Yeah, so you're saying stuff like what do you call it? Arkham's Astrolabe and those sort of a lot of the 2-mana stuff like that. They're just not good at all unless you have a real good reason for playing artifacts.
Right, real good reason. Aside from that, I'd just say you don't need to play fixing cards. You don't have to worry about it so much.
I've played many decks. Even one right now, my kind of casual-ish Liesa deck only plays basic lands in it, and it's a 2-color deck. But like I play double white, double black spells in there, and my experience has been the mana's pretty easy, and it works just fine as a 2-color deck with just basics.
Yeah, maybe the real takeaway from this point is just be more conservative with the amount of colorless lands you play in your deck.
Yeah.
Because you should really evaluate those and tap lands. I think for the most part,
similarly,
pretty similar in my opinion.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Because there's going to be times where you have that untapped colorless land, but if you are like a 3+ color deck, it's not going to do you any good. So, something to consider.
All right. Well, moving on from that topic, I want to talk about the idea of silver border cards and custom rules and proxies and stuff like that, along the lines of you'll go on places like Reddit or you'll watch people's YouTube videos and they will say things like, everybody is okay, or someone will ask a question on Reddit being like, hey, how do you will I be able to make this uncommander deck or something, or will I be able to play this will I be able to play like this, not like a what do you call them, the Nephilims, right? And people in the comments were like, yeah, that's fine with me, and also should be fine with and is fine with most people. And it's like, I don't think that's a very good representation of the real world. I don't think there should be. I'm not fine with a lot of those things, and I feel like I'm being kind of neglected in that response, right?
Well, and they don't always put it like this in the responses, but oftentimes it's sort of, hey, I want to do this silver bordered thing. I want to play Nephilim or whatever. Would you guys and everyone else be okay with this? And people will respond and be like, yeah, I'd be okay with it. And actually, in a way, anyone who says they're not okay with it, they're kind of a dick.
Yeah. And I think one of the recent Professor Deck texts was like, he was talking about some expensive card, and he's like, it's a casual format, so just write the name of the card on a piece of cardboard, and then it's the same thing. And it's like,
Fax Metalworker is a great addition to this deck. So if you have one lying around, or you're rich enough to spend the cash on one, go ahead. For the rest of us, just write Metalworker on another card, and then say it's a Metalworker. It's casual commander, you can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, proxies are fine and stuff, but I don't think you should be spreading the idea that, that's just an expected thing,
it's
right?
It's not the default.
It's not the default.
Just assume that this is fine because most people, especially if you know them or you're friendly with them in some way, would be open to the idea. You shouldn't go into a game expecting, if I pull out my silver border deck and ask people if I can play with it, you shouldn't just automatically assume they're going to say yes, or that they're bad people for saying no.
Yeah. I don't have much else to say about that. Just don't act like everybody is on board with this, because I think that you're kind of fooling yourself.
Yeah, you should. You're kind of in the minority a little bit. I think honestly, most people just want to play regular Commander because the game's pretty complex as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to say I'm not looking to play a random pick up silver border game, especially when you throw in the power level thing into that, and having to. That's another.
It's really hard to have that
about.
Conversation, yeah.
You that just goes out the window with silver border cards, because not saying they're too strong or too weak. It's just you don't factor them in when you're building your deck.
No, yeah.
You don't expect, am I going to ever have to deal with this sort of effect, like somebody, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know,
flipping my card through the air or something.
Yeah, I gotta put my cards in under my lands so that they can't play their split second card that way to flip it through the air and land on it.
Is this spell too wordy?
Yeah. Do I have to play the Christopher Rush version of the card so it has different effects with the Artist Matters cards?
Should I put in my contacts today?
Yeah, not wear your glasses for the Beebly Bobble or whatever.
Damn it, I wore jeans.
Yeah. Are we playing at midnight? Okay. Well, let's move on from that, Eli.
Yeah, so I wanted to, I have another point here. It's that I think us as Magic players in general, but specifically Commander players, tend to overthink just about everything.
Yeah.
And overanalyze every card. I mean, we're kind of in a perpetual spoiler season over the last year, and so you'll notice, if you go on the Command Zone's channel, what was it, Spencer? 80% of their uploads this year have been, at least for the podcast.
More than 80%. I was looking at their channel over the last 3 months or something, and they 3 months, and they had 3 episodes that were not about a deck upgrade or a spoiler video. 3 videos about something not that.
Yeah, it's we're set review channels now. I mean, we're gonna try and stay away from that, because I personally there is some value in listening to a set review and being I want to see what these guys thought about this new card, but there's
way too much.
In these set reviews, they'll pick out every so many card that's even if you could make any kind of argument for this card being played in any deck. They're we need to talk about this, and we need to talk about it for 5 minutes and dig up every little corner case card that works with this and everything it can do, its best case scenario, and really big it up. And I'm just thinking, not everything is worth talking about. We did our 1 set review episode for Kaldheim, and the format of that was supposed to be just cards that we really liked and cards that we could see ourselves playing in decks. And unfortunately, Kaldheim was just a really good set.
Yeah,
so that was a lot of cards.
It was 2.5 hours or something. It was a long time.
That was grueling.
Yeah.
And we tried by design to have it be a small amount of cards.
Yeah.
So this perpetual set review that we're in, I just think people could afford to cut it back a little bit and
make them shorter. I think they could get by with 1 or 2 episodes for a set review, they meaning the Command Zone and other podcasts like that, instead of here's all the new legendaries, here's all the new green cards, here's the new green and white cards, here's all the new non-legendary multicolored cards. You don't need to make 9 videos.
Or at least be more
quick about talking about the cards?
Well,
realistic?
Have a higher threshold for the kind of card that you put on your set review, because our format, we want it to be specifically cards that we could actually see ourselves playing, whereas Command Zone did their Modern Horizons set review, and they talked about the green cantrip that either draws you a land or a non-land. And we're talking about it this is actually going to go in most green decks. And it's are you actually going to play that card?
I don't hate that card, but I don't think I'm going to play it.
Are you going to think about this card after you've done the set review? Is this... I don't know. I just feel the amount of time... I feel people are wasting their breath a lot of time, and...
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's too many cards lately.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all going to make the cut.
Speaking of too many cards, in Magic the Gathering Command... Sorry, this is a terrible transition. Speaking of too many cards, when you're playing a game of Commander and someone's got their 40 bird tokens on the field, that's a lot of cards. Right, Eli?
It's a lot of information.
And I got a hot take here, right? You use the right tokens for your cards. Don't just put a dice on the table with nothing underneath it. At least use a token.
Use something the shape of a card, whether that be an advertisement card, the wrong token, I
Yeah.
don't care. It looks like a card.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can see it tapped or untapped.
That's a really big pet peeve of mine. People just putting dice on the field and like as an untapped or tapped thing, and also like it's really hard to even sometimes recognize that there's anything there if it's just a dice without a card underneath it. Like Magic the Gathering, EDH is a very complicated game, and it's very hard to see at a glance the number of creatures on someone's board when it's just a dice without even a token underneath it.
Also, if you're using a die to represent a token, and somebody goes to attack you, and you say, "Oh, I block with my token, kill your creature," and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you had that. Can I take that back?" And you say, "Oh, I had my token out." You're the asshole.
Yeah, I think the best, honestly, like, and I would even say let's say you have 3 zombie tokens, get 3 goddamn zombie tokens. Don't put a zombie token with a dice on it. It's just so much better. It's like, obviously you can do that, but it's a pet peeve of mine. Just use 3 tokens. I get it. It gets unreasonable at some point when you're playing.
It's hard. I try my hardest to be the token keeper. I have a box that I keep my dice in, and I keep a stack of tokens that aren't necessarily tailored to my specific decks, but they're meant to be tokens that other people would commonly create in the game. So I have like my 2/2 bird for Swan Song. I have a beast token for beasts.
Yeah.
Within. I have elephants for Generous Gift, 4/4 beasts for Azuri's Predation.
Yeah.
Anything that somebody else would make and not have the token, because they never have the token. That's another thing. If you're going to play those cards, try and have the token that you give somebody. Because I know it's not your token.
Yeah.
But it's just, it feels like the right thing to do. It's helpful.
I have a Jira deck. It makes rhinos. I've got like 4 rhino tokens. Don't have just one. Have several. And when I get more than 4 tokens, I just start using random other tokens flipped upside down.
Well, here's the thing. I think you want to have at least 2 if you're playing that kind of like a token deck strategy, because you want to, if you get so many that you have to put a die on and make your stack of tokens, you want to have a stack for untapped tokens and tapped tokens.
Yeah, or maybe even before that, it'd be like tokens that can attack this turn, tokens that can't, or something like that,
yeah,
right?
for like summoning sickness and stuff. You don't want to have like the one token and have a die in one corner and be like, this is my untapped tokens, and a die in the other corner and be like, these are tapped. And
yeah, but also imagine how much of a Chad you are if you pull up with your Gave Guru of a Spores deck and you just have like a box of like 300 Saproling tokens. And then you make like 20 tokens, and instead of having a token with a die with 20 on it, you just throw 20 tokens on the field stacked up, and then you put a die on it afterwards or something, just because. I get it, but tokens based, use them, please.
yeah, they're very cool.
Oh my god! And if you really want to, grab some of those copy tokens they made recently. Those are so good.
Copy tokens are great, and I also want to give a shout out to, I can't remember the brand name, but those dry erase tokens where you can draw on the token card.
Those are cool.
Those are really cool. So stuff like that, I want to see more of it. But yeah, copy tokens definitely are great because you can just say, it looks like the creature. Somebody asks you what this is, you just say, oh, it's meant to be.
Yeah, you can draw your own tokens too, like on a piece of paper and put it in a sleeve, and then you have like your own zombie.
Yeah.
If you feel like it.
Exactly.
All right, Eli, what you got next for me?
Okay, this is maybe another. This is a hot one.
Hot one. Nice.
This is my personal opinion too, so I mean, I understand people feel strongly about this, but spot removal, like single target removal in Commander, it's actually like so bad in my, like, I know you need to play it, and I do play it, I will never not play it, but it has been the thing that I've been cutting more and more from my decks, and I'm not missing it. You know, honestly, I've got a deck that I wanted to kind of try and detune a little bit and be less well, not like detune, but just make it less, quote, mean.
Sure.
Like, yeah. I don't like stopping people from having their fun, so I wanted to make more proactive decks.
Yeah.
And in my experience, what I'm finding, I feel like proactive decks are almost always stronger than reactive decks.
Sure, I see what you mean.
Or easier to play.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously you need to have answers in your commander decks, right? Like, we're not going to sit here and tell you not to play answers. I think maybe a better way to move, a better direction to move, maybe if we're trying to make an argument for spot removal being bad, we got to come up with something to put instead, right? I think maybe playing spot removal that is either comes with something else, like for example a arcane denial that counters a spell then draws you the card back, or like a destroy a creature on the body, like a ravenous chupacabra, like where it has something with it, right?
I'm glad that you brought up Arcane Denial because I wanted to break down, and this is something that people have talked about before, so this isn't like exactly a new opinion, and it's maybe not a super hot take, but everyone knows spot removal or single target removal in Commander. It is card disadvantage for the person who's playing it and the person you're playing it against.
Yeah.
In that you have 4 opponents in your game, so if you 1-for-1 one of your opponents, you're actually down a card on
The other
two
two.
other people.
You and your opponent are both down a card.
Yeah, so you are down card advantage. When
You're
you
kind
play
of
that.
kamikazing yourself a little bit and hitting that other guy.
So Arcane Denial is actually a perfect example of a card, because you might read it and see, well, it makes one of my opponents draw 2 cards, so that is card disadvantage for me.
Mm-hmm.
But really how Arcane Denial works is you counter a threat from your opponent, you're losing a card, they're losing a card. But you're drawing a card to replace your card, so you're not down on the 2 other opponents. And your opponent whose thing you countered, they draw 2 cards, so really you're not down to the 2 other people.
Yeah, and if you countered a spell that was more than 2 mana, it's kind of like they got down the tempo, I suppose. So maybe that 2 cards they had is, maybe it's counteracted by a little bit of the tempo they lost from getting their 5 mana spell countered or something. So it's kind of like everyone's even now a little bit.
Yeah, so it's interesting how something like Arcane Denial, which in a 1v1 format reads
Sucks ass.
as card disadvantage.
Yeah.
In Commander, it's not card disadvantage.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
So that's actually a great example. But like you were saying, stuff that removal on a body or something that like says remove a thing, draw a card, or has some other effect on it.
Yeah.
Or just in general, like if you're going to play some amount of spot removal, people always like to say when people complain about threats in Commander, like, oh, just play more removal in your deck. And really, no, the answer should be play more card draw or more like tutors or something like that so you can find the removal you already have.
Yeah.
Just playing more removal, you can't 1-for-1 everything.
And I think you and me, talking about that, you and I are pretty big fans of just playing board wipes, right? As in places of removal, maybe sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
board wipes are perfect. Like they do. I see the argument for them slowing down the game. People don't like that aspect of it. But if you're going for pure card advantage, another thing is that you want to get rid of are people's commanders. And if you spot remove a commander, that's effectively a 1-for-0 because they're not actually losing that card. It's a tempo blowout. They have to recast their commander.
I'm with you, yeah.
But a board wipe, I think, is the perfect answer for commander, or something like a Merciless Executioner, Marauder, something like that, where you can play it and you get multiple cards for one. Like even if you just get 1 per opponent.
Yeah, you're saying you don't want a 1-for-1 with one player. You want a 1-for-1 with the table if you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got you there.
They made that white card. What is it? The 3 mana for each opponent.
Oh
destroy
yeah.
an artifact or enchantment they control.
That's cool.
Stuff like that seems really good. Like it's not efficient. It's not instant speed sometimes.
Yeah, or something like Wingwraith's Judgment. Maybe I know that cuts a card that maybe it's not even. It was a card that was pretty hyped when it came out, but no one really played it, right?
Out of favor because it's 5 mana. But honestly, I think I would play that card, and I think I'd love it.
Yeah, or maybe like a Decimate or something, right? Where it hits a bunch of things.
Amazing, yeah.
Volcanic Offering, cards like these that are able to deal with multiple threats, or at the very least one of each person or something like that. It's more. You're not as like down behind the table. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know some people. You feel really good when you remove somebody's thing. Like it feels like you got one, like you pulled one over on them.
And you did, right? You did pull one over on them. You just also pulled one over on yourself.
You pulled one over on yourself. People don't understand that though, especially like people aren't at all conservative with their removal. Like I play that amount of removal, but you can't. Like I said, you can't remove everything, especially with 3 opponents.
Yeah.
Unless you're drawing an obscene amount of cards, in which case, go for it. Like, some decks can manage that.
Yeah, if you're drawing an obscene amount of cards, just spot remove everything from everybody and you're fine, right?
Yeah, because Commander is a game of attrition, but it's like
a Nezahal deck or something. You can afford to keep, sometimes just keep playing removal.
It's like if you were in a 4-way shootout. And everyone had a gun with the same amount of bullets, and you just shot one guy like 6 times.
No, I'm with you.
Like
now you're out of bullets.
Yeah.
All right.
I think people should just be more conservative with their spot removal and really feel like when you remove something, you should feel bad. Like you should feel like
it's not good for you.
Not like morally bad, but you shouldn't feel like you've won one over there. Like you're winning You're gonna feel like you're winning a lot of battles, but you're losing the war.
If you remove something from someone, it should feel bad because you know that your other two opponents didn't have to remove it. You're helping your two other opponents, right? That's what you're saying, kind of.
Yeah, and if you're more conservative with your removal, you might end up in the situation where your opponents feel like they have to do it. And then that's great for you.
And if they do it, it's even better for you. So that's why another reason why I think you and I, Eli, really like instant speed removal if we have it at all. So we can like if it's let's say if it's a creature that the only threat of it is attacking or something, you can kill it if it comes at you, right?
Yeah, this is a very common sentiment because if you have single target removal, the reason you want it to be instant speed
and cheap mana
is mostly for that ability to wait until the last possible moment.
Wait until it's gonna really hurt you really badly. Yeah.
Hold on to it as long as you can.
Well, all right. Speaking of removal, ways to get rid of other people's cards, I think discard is a mechanic that is too stigmatized by Commander players.
Underutilized
for
see
sure.
A lot of it.
We were talking about that Playing with Power podcast episode a while ago, and something that they said in that episode was that there are two aspects of Commander which are like safe, and that's lands and hands, like from like the social contract kind of thing. And like I heard that and I was like, what are you talking about? Where does this idea that like your hands are safe as in a Commander come from? I don't know what. I don't know. Discard's good. The effects are good and they're fair.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of it. I think the main one that I used to play was Sadistic Hypnotist, probably one of the more popular versions of that effect. But it kind of is a little bit stigmatized. I think nobody ever made me feel bad for playing that card, but I felt a little bit bad doing that to people because it was very strong and a very effective way of like closing out a game in my token deck because I wanted to make sure people didn't have board wipes for me.
Yeah. No, and you were talking, Eli, earlier about like going 1-for-1 with the table. There's like there's like a rat which makes all your opponents discard a card. Maybe it's not a rat. But for like 2 mana, for like a 1/1, it makes all your opponents discard a card.
Oh, I love those cards. One of my favorite cards from when I started Magic was Liliana's Spectre, which is a 3 mana 2/1 flyer, enters the battlefield, and each opponent discards a card.
Yeah, like that is going 1-for-1 with the table, and you could really hurt someone pretty badly, like in a good way, which is powerful. One of my favorite like discard cards. I mean, if we're sticking on this theme of hitting everyone, there's that 4 mana discard sorcery where each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card for each card they discarded.
Yeah.
So it's essentially a 4 mana draw 3, and your opponents each go down a card. That's really good value. Yeah.
It's better than Harmonize if you have 3 opponents, and people love Harmonize.
It's really good. I think that card's pretty underutilized.
Yeah, Siphon Mind.
Yeah. And then I'm a big fan. Now this might be kind of a no-no card, but I really like Mind Twist. I think Mind Twist is an awesome card. It's X and a black. Target player discards X cards at random from their hand. If you're gonna, sometimes you just need to deal with someone, right? Like sometimes someone needs like how else are you gonna deal with like a control player or something that has like a full grip of cards or something, or maybe even like a Reliquary Tower or something. There's not much else you can do other than that or wheel.
Well, people like to complain about how strong green decks or Simic decks are because they put so many lands into play and then they end up with so many cards in their hand. But once they've done their ramping, you go ramp, and then card draw, and then they build up to that turn where they spend all that mana and they spend out their cards, and that usually draws them more cards. But if you could hit them before they get the chance to do that,
honestly, like I'm not like the biggest fan of cards like people will say cards like Thoughtseize or Duress or something aren't like really Commander cards. But you really could play a Thoughtseize in your deck if you wanted to. And then like when the green deck, like you were saying, Eli, goes, ramp up to, spend all their cards really early in ramp, and then they have 2 or 3 cards left in their hand, and you Thoughtseize them, and you take their card that draws 5 cards, and they're like, oops, now what?
Yeah, again, the Thoughtseize and Duress, stuff
all
like
those
that.
Cards.
You probably just don't see a lot of those because it is that sort of one for one thing, but it feels like worse than like a typical spot removal spell because it's not instant speed. I mean,
they don't have to cast the spell. They don't have to spend the mana on it.
Yeah, it feels very very niche. But I mean, like you said, things like Mind Twist.
Yeah,
I think there is some other like 6 mana uncommon from a core set in the last couple years.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like
the one where they discard a bunch of cards, then they all non.
Well, it can't be countered,
Yeah.
and it says somebody discards like all non-land cards in their hand.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy crap! Like that's just
Yeah.
like you're saying about like control stuff. Like you'd say like, well, if they got a bunch of cards in their hand and
They counter it or something.
they
right?
counter it, right? So
But
something like that, I think, is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, and it also, the creatures like that, like when they hit somebody, they discard a card or whatever. I think those are all pretty good.
Yeah, like those repeatable incremental ones, or like the ones that, like you said, trigger on combat.
What is it?
damage
Shadow
or-
Mage Infiltrator? Is that the original? No, is that one draw you a card?
I think that one draws you a card.
There's
but
some of them that make you discard a card and you draw a card. I think.
It's the Spectre mechanic.
Yeah, the Spectre mechanic.
Either on combat damage or when they enter the battlefield. I think cards like that are pretty cool. I mean, especially because they're a body and then they get you additional utility. Like,
So yeah, I think you could look to maybe play a little bit more discard in your black containing decks. It might be kind of, and it's not bad. And Tiny Bones isn't an evil card, and playing discard isn't bad. Don't listen to people that tell you that, okay?
and Hypnotic Spectre is epic.
Hypnotic Spectre's pretty epic, yeah. Nice. What you got, Eli? What's next?
Well, I mean, if you're playing the sort of game where you lost your hand and you're not really doing much, some people might just sit around and wait to get knocked out. But over the last couple months, I've been really reevaluating what it takes for me to concede in a game, and I want to really put out there that there's no shame in conceding a game of Magic.
Yeah.
If you're not having fun or you just like feel like you've played all your outs and it's just inevitable, like I get some people, if somebody like has a lock on the board, if like they have a full board of stuff, they have cards in their hand and they're going to win eventually, but they haven't quite done it, and you think maybe I can survive 2 more turns if I draw just the perfect top deck, maybe I live, then yeah, maybe you want to stay in, but I think that's kind of too common.
I'm not a huge fan of conceding out of a game. Like if you're the only, like there's a 4-player game and you concede and everyone else is going to keep playing. I'm not a big fan of that. But I think if like there's that situation where like it's very clear that someone's probably going to win, like, and it's just like kind of taking too long. You and the other 3 players, the other 2 players that are in the game, you can just like, hey, you guys want to scoop up? You seen enough? It's like, yeah, okay, let's play another game. That's fine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. Like I should have clarified that yeah, you shouldn't just scoop out like immediately out of a game because one thing went wrong or you feel like you're not winning in the moment. But if you know the game is pretty much over and you've lost,
feel free to offer to your other people, people in the game, be like, hey, you guys want to scoop?
Yeah, that's how I like to do it. If everyone else in the game feels like they honestly have a chance for some reason, because you don't know what they're thinking, what they have in their hand.
Yeah.
What they're doing, so you could be like, hey, how do you guys feel about this?
Like, no, I got something. I was like, okay,
if we're not having fun anymore and the writing's on the wall, like, we may as well just concede, because I feel like some people feel some shame about that, and people really want to win, so you want to believe that you can play to your outs and you can come back from that situation, but
well, it like, and maybe you even can win. Like obviously, like you can win sometimes. There's like miracle draws, but like, and like that's fun in its own way sometimes too. But there's nothing wrong with just being like, I don't need to win. Let's just scoop it up and play the next one, right? There's nothing wrong with being like, I think you got it. Congratulations, you won.
Yeah, people like to kind of overestimate themselves sometimes and feel like they've always got it. Like, I think I was playing a game back in the Alexandria game shop, and we used to have league games where we play like on a timer, and I had knocked out my other opponents, but it was down to me and this one other guy, and he had pretty much nothing, like no cards in his hand, like very little as a board presence, but he had this kind of lock where he could recur an Oblivion Stone or like something like that every turn and play it, and the game went to time and it ended as a draw.
Yeah.
And he was pretty much like, well, you're never going to be able to win. It's like, no, if I draw until like I get removal for your thing,
I will win.
Then I can win because I have all these cards in my hand and like this, and I'm ready to go, like put it out and kill you. But in that situation, I don't know. I think maybe if you couldn't win, maybe you should just concede. But unless you're playing a troll,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But well, and one thing is like you're only in a commander pod, you're only expected to win quarter your games or even less maybe, or whatever. You're not supposed to win all your games, so there's no shame in losing.
Right, yeah. You have 3 opponents. Your win rate in Commander should be an average of 25%.
Yeah.
And that's something that's hard for some people to parse, but yeah, you should get used to losing if you're playing Commander. It's going to happen a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unless you're Spencer Cook.
Of course, always win. Boom, 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 boom. No. Well, speaking of Spencer Cook, that's me. I'm going to talk about my next... well, this is our last one, actually. Our final, number 13. Lucky number 13, as they say. So, Howling Mine. Cards like that make everyone draw additional cards or play lands faster or something. Pretty cringe is my opinion on that. I'm gonna give you my take here, okay?
Aside from maybe wheels, right?
Yeah, wheels are fine. But like effects that like change the way the game plays but I think Howling Mine is a very good example of what I'm trying to describe. And that's Howling Mine says each player draws 2 cards every turn. Now this isn't something you're wrong for playing or like that this is just like a personal thing for me. I like to build my decks in certain ways where like I want to like have just barely outlast my opponents kind of thing, or I like to like I play enough lands so that I can kind of like make sure I hit all my land drops or whatever, right? I feel like Howling Mine kind of rewards kind of what I would call maybe worse deck building or whatever. So, and that's okay, you can do that. But it's specifically when I see a Howling Mine come down on the field, I'm not like, oh sweet, more cards. My first reaction is, oh shit, now my opponents are gonna get bailed out. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh no, that's 3 cards to every one that I get.
Yeah. So when I see cards like, I don't think Howling Mine effects are good, first of all, unless you're playing a deck where obviously like they take damage for drawing cards or something like that, right? But when I see a Howling Mine on my opponent's side, it's not good for me. In both strategically and in like my deck building, I think I talked about that. I think you understand what I'm coming from a little bit.
Yeah, I think I don't consider myself to be the best player, but I feel like I put some care into my decks, and I think they're pretty okay. Mm-hmm. And I kind of compensate for my skill by putting in additional like card draw and like resource advantage so that I can afford to make a couple mistakes in the game, and it should still be fine. But I feel like if you're throwing like all this group hug card draw effect in the game, like people can just like freaking do whatever. You know what? Spot remove anything you want. Yeah. Because you're gonna get more cards anyway.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
whatever.
You can play 30 spot removal spells if you know your opponents are going to be playing a Howling Mine and going to just like throw all of our suggestions. Like Howling Mine makes me wrong. Makes all of our takes that we give wrong because it just throws everything out the window. And I don't like being wrong, so I don't want people to play Howling Mine and make me wrong.
It changes the nature of the game. Yeah. It's not right. You were meant to draw 1 card a turn, maybe more through your own means.
Yeah, just like Richard Garfield said. But I don't want to talk about that for too long. I think you can maybe understand where I'm coming from and maybe think about it on your own and maybe kind of understand what I'm saying. So yeah, that's about all our hot takes we have for today. I think this was a fun episode to do.
This has been our airing of the grievances and just little tips or little opinions that we just wanted to get out there. We didn't have a real solid idea for a topic.
Yeah.
And I just had a few things that I thought we should talk about and bring up, and because we have a lot of conversations about Commander when we're working on our show notes or when we're recording. So I thought it'd be fun to do a little kind of lightning round.
Yeah, a little lightning round. Little thing. Eli, do you want to bring up what our post-topic discussion is going to be for this episode?
Oh, yeah. So we spent a little bit of time dunking on the Playing with Power episode.
Episode 3 of their podcast.
With Alex from the Spike Feeders, their Boros episode, because, we got feelings on that.
All about Lorehold.
But they had an episode recently, the Playing with Power podcast, episode 8, titled The Challenge of Winning in Commander, featuring Cameron from the Laboratory Maniacs. And this was a really good topic, I think, because he dove in. We mentioned earlier in the conceding section how you should only be winning 25% of your games. Mm-hmm. And this whole episode's pretty much about that, just how hard it actually is to have a better win rate in a game of Commander because of the extra levels of variance. You have 3 opponents. There's just so much that goes into it. And you had told me before they did this episode that Cameron did a video
Yeah.
on the data that he extrapolated from, what was it? If you play...
It was something like 3 games a week or 4 games a
if
week.
you play 3 games a week
for a year.
And you're playing once a week.
Yeah, once a week.
3 games.
3 games a week. If you play for a year, there should be a point in a section of time in that year where you don't win a game for a month, because just how the statistics work.
Yeah,
and that's something that a lot of players might not realize. Like if you have like a losing streak, that's expected. That's like if you don't have a losing streak, that's a statistical anomaly.
But I think myself and many Commander players will have that happen and think, man, I'm having such a slump right now. I suck. Like, what's wrong with me? I need to tune up my decks. I need to up my game somehow. I need to practice. And it's like, no, the odds are literally against you in a game of Commander.
Yeah. And you know, statistics can be very unintuitive. Like, you'd be like, okay, I win 25% of games. That shouldn't mean I don't win for a month, right? No, that is exactly what it means. You should expect that. Yeah, it's very weird how the statistics work out there. If you're curious about this, go watch that episode of Playing with Power, or go watch Cameron's video on the Lab Maniacs from 3 or 4 months ago, I think, about the topic.
I can't remember exactly what he said about this, but he mentioned something about a Commander tournament, or maybe it was a CEDH specifically tournament, where they had some data on the win rates compared to the turn order, and one thing he noted was the person going fourth in the CEDH games, their win rate was much lower than that of the other players.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just another thing you have to factor in, is who's going first in a game of Commander. Because your turn order does matter, like especially in CEDH, like I think he was saying, the point is, the faster the game is, the more the first player matters.
Yeah, if the game is 20 turns, the first player doesn't matter. It's probably less meaningful who the first player is, but if it's 3 turns, the first player, had access to way more advantage.
Yeah, if you're winning on turn 4 and everyone else only had 3 turns in the game, then that does matter.
Yeah, because you drew 4 total cards for your draw steps that turn. And then your opponents drew 3, so that's like an extra 25%. Versus if it's 20 turns, you drew 20 versus 19, and that's only like 5%.
Yeah, so there's no perfect way to hedge the variance of Commander. There's just so many things, or like we were talking about with the removal thing. Like, you might just play with somebody who decides they want you to lose the game.
Yeah, you don't, and there's not really much you can do about it, right?
You can't really do much about that, and all you can do is, if you don't enjoy playing with that person, you can say, I don't want to play with you anymore, if you're going to kamikaze me out of the game.
Or you could just shuffle up and play again, and hope.
Yeah, or you can just be fine with it and, see if it happens to somebody,
Maybe it'll happen to someone else, and you'll be like, nice, not me.
Yeah, exactly. It's, there's a lot that can happen, people make mistakes, too,
Not everyone plays optimally, right? Yeah.
You can't factor
Only
that
I
in.
play often. Sorry.
So yeah, we usually pick on people a little bit, so I wanted to give that a shout out because I think that's a very positive message out of our friends from the CEDH community to observe something like that, and it does apply to regular Commander. It certainly does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, Cameron.
And whoever, I don't know the Playing with Power guy's name, but good job him too. For bringing Cameron on.
Yeah.
Good job for getting a good guest.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's, I think, about all we have for this episode of EDHTakes. I was about to say EDH Rec. I don't want to make that mistake. One of my friends at some point was looking up EDH Rec, and he looked up EDHTakes instead on accident.
That's just good branding.
Yeah. It was pretty epic. I'm like, we won. We did it. But yeah, I guess, do the things, comments and stuff. We love to read them. We appreciate all the comments we've been getting lately. I think we're going to do a new tier list episode pretty soon, too. Maybe some other type of content. We'll get there.
Yeah, tell us what you think. If you hardcore disagree with us on some of these things, we want to hear it.
Yeah, tell me.
We want to see, because maybe, I don't want to entertain this idea too frequently, Spencer, but we might be wrong sometimes.
No.
So.
Right? No. Really?
So maybe we could become enlightened and change our views and grow as people.
We can
and all that.
we can become enlightened, but not the tutor, because Topdeck tutor or something. No, it's obviously a good card. I'm not. Don't lambaste me for those takes, please.
But yeah, subscribe, like the video, comment.
Twitter, all those things.
Twitter at EDHTakes. Find us on there.
Spotify, all those things.
Yeah, Spotify. And as always, thank you for listening, and thank you to Spencer for being Spencer.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.